Welcome to this session on placing geometry. This session will basically be a review of many of the techniques you learned in the GC 101 course. We'll go through it fairly quickly, but we're going to start a new stacking model by placing a few points, creating a form, and using some sliders and variables to control the parameters. So let's start by creating a new file, and I'm going to call this file GC floor model. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is switch this over to the building design workflow and attach a reference file. So in the supplement folder on this project, under designs, you should find a csite.dgn. We're going to attach that and use that as the basic site boundary. There is a non-plot level in there you can turn off if need be. Also going to turn off the grid and the view attributes now that I have that site. Gives me some scale. And I'll do a save settings now that that's attached. And then just as we did in the last session, I'm going to place 3 points. So I'm going to go back to the computational design workflow, select my point tool. Note that I had not created my base CS yet. It's asking me if I'd like to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes. So it won't let you place geometry in the file until that base CS is created. We'll create it in the design model and select OK. And then I'm going to place these 3 points anywhere on the site, basically to create 3 points along an arc. So after I've placed the 3 points, we right-click to reset. And I'm going to go over to my Transactions tab and record those transactions. So it created the base CS and then the 3 points. I'm going to switch back to my node types. I'm going to select the icon which automatically opens the node properties every time a node is placed. And then we'll find the arc node, and we're going to place that on the graph. And we're going to use the method by points on a curve. And we'll just link our 3 points as the start point, the point on the curve, and the end point. I'll go back to the Transactions tab and record that transaction, and then go back to the node types, and I'm now going to add a freeform. And the technique will be by curve, and the curve will be the arc1 curve, which I'm going to rename at this point and call arc base. You can rename a node at any time and it will rename it retroactively anywhere it's been used. For the height, I'm just going to put in a value for now. This will come back and add variables. So we're going to make that 25 feet, and the width, I'm going to put in 30 feet. I'll come over here to the Node Properties tab, and I am going to select a family and part. So we'll select Schematic Design, and I'm going to use a massing solid. And we'll go back to the Transactions tab and record the transaction. And next we'll place a few sliders to control that height and width value. So we'll go back to the node types, come down to our utility nodes, and I'm going to select a slider node. So I'm going to rename the first one as height. And I'll come over here and adjust my values, minimum and maximum. So I'm going to start with the maximum, and we're going to make that 260 feet. If you notice on the site, There's actually a building height limitation noted on there, which is 260 feet. So that's basically where that value is coming from. As far as a minimum, we can leave that at 0. And for the start value, or the initial value, I'm going to put in 100 feet. Then I'm going to reduce the resolution to 1 foot. We'll do snap 2 ticks, and I'll make that 1 foot as well. So that's our first variable setup, or slider. And I'm going to basically copy that and create the width slider. So I can right click on the height node and select copy, and then we'll just paste that node on the graph, and I'm going to rename this as width, and we'll adjust our maximum and minimum values. So I'm going to set that maximum value to 75 feet. That would probably be about the maximum I would make a hotel, even with a double loaded corridor. I'm going to set the minimum at 25, because that would probably be the minimum, acceptable even with a single loaded corridor. And then we'll set a default value, and I'm going to make that 35. And we'll leave the resolutions at 1. So those two sliders could be used to drive our freeform, which we're going to call form base. And I'm going to go ahead and record those transactions. And then I'm going to create a couple more sliders. If we truly wanted to create a stacking model, which we'll do in the next exercises, we probably need to control a few other things. We're going to have guest room floors, so the lobby might have a particular floor-to-floor height. The guest room floors would have their own floor-to-floor height. And so those are additional sliders. So I'm going to paste another node on the graph, and I'm going to name this one height lobby. And so this will be just the height of the lobby. If I double click that node, then it shows up in the node properties. And so the maximum in this case might be 25 feet. Minimum might be 10 feet. There's sort of a minimum height you could have for floor to floor. And we're going to set the default value at 20. And then I could take that node, and we'll copy that and paste that node on the graph. And I'm going to rename this as height GR, indicating this will be the height of the guest room floors. Again, double click to make sure I'm editing those properties, the height GR, and I'm going to start with the minimum and make that 10. And we'll make the default value 12, and we'll give it a maximum of 25. And then we'll go back and use some of these variables on our form. So in this case, rather than allow this form to be the entire height of the building, we're actually going to create a stacking model where each floor has its own mass. So this one will be the lobby floor. So in this case, we're going to link the height input to our height lobby slider, and we're going to link the width to the width. It looks like I didn't have my width value set correctly. So this should have been 35. I think we put a minimum on there of 25 and a maximum of 75. There we go. Now we've got that correct. And I think I must have inadvertently edited the height when I meant to be editing the width. So let's go back and correct that. So we had put this in as 100. Our minimum was 0 and our maximum was 260. Okay, looks like I have all of that correct. Go back to our transactions and record all of that. Let me real quick, I want to check my control panel and make sure everything is set the way I want. The height is at 75. Let me go back and double check. I actually meant to put that in as 100. go back and record that change as well. So now we've got the height at 100, the height of the guest rooms are at 12, the height of the lobby is at 20, and the width of the building is at 35. I may want to come back and take those last 3 transactions and select all 3 of them and consolidate them so that we don't have some of the different iterations there, and we'll end up with the same result in the end. Kind of keeps our script neat there. Okay, in the next session, we're going to take a look at making an expression node. We're going to use an expression node to define the number of guest room floors based on the data that we've already put in there.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.